Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott.
Josh, my friend, it seems like the end of an era because we've been covering this since February last year. The idea that the PlayStation 5 would be fully backwards compatible with PlayStation 1 games, PS2 and PS3 titles. Because back in February last year, that was when the patent came out that Mark Sony, lead architect over at Sony PlayStation, had apparently been the head of this patent that would show that the console could emulate various other past-gen systems inside the PlayStation 5. Therefore, you know, all joy breaks loose and it's all going to be lovely. That's not the case anymore, because coming from Mr. Jim Ryan, the man that's just dashing hopes left, right and centre, he was talking to Famitsu, and he did clarify that 99% of PlayStation 4 games will work on the PS5, and they do have the PS Plus collection coming, etc. But they said that while they were working on that, he said, while implementing PS4 games, we also focused our efforts on taking in the high-speed SSD and the new controller DualSense. He said, but unfortunately, we couldn't reach the implementations of such capabilities in regards to the PS1, PS2, and PS3 stuff. Yeah. So literally outlining that, no, the dream's dead, mate. The dream is dead.
I hate it, Scott. You know what I mean? Like you said, it feels like, I think someone commented yesterday on a video we did about the PlayStation 5 about how it feels like the season finale of our news videos. You know, we've had Gotham Knights, we've had all the PlayStation 5 stuff, and now we've had confirmation that the PlayStation 5 won't be backwards compatible with all of its legacy console and the previous
Not physically,
systems.
Anyway.
I know it does suck, and it is such a shame because it feels like they're leaving money on the table, even though we know from their previous comments that apparently, you know, the older games don't actually sell that well, and it's only a small percentage of the user base that actually makes full use of backwards compatibility and stuff. Like it still sucks because I feel like, you know, the entire mentality when it comes to these older games from a lot of these executives is that they're not worthy of being talked about today, and that's just such a backwards way of thinking in my mind, because why wouldn't you want to embrace your legacy? Yes, the games are dated, but just because those original 3D graphics on the PlayStation 1 don't look very good today doesn't mean that the games are inherently inferior, you know what I mean? Like, we go back constantly to the likes of Crash Bandicoot, Metal Gear Solid, you know, Final Fantasy VII, the greats that still hold up no matter how rudimentary their graphics may be or the limitations of the consoles and stuff. And it's like, why wouldn't you want to champion that? Is it just so you can sell remakes and remasters like Demon's Souls? Or is it because you just genuinely have no interest in it? And I know it's a lot of engineering work to get a console to natively play all of these different machines. And it doesn't mean that we completely ruling out the idea of some PlayStation 2, 3, and 1 games coming to the PlayStation 5. But it's like, after Game Pass has done it so well, it's like, you just really don't want to go to war on this frontier. You don't want to face off on this idea of it being a legacy console. And I suppose that's their prerogative, but for long-time PlayStation fans like me and you, it is a bit of a shame.
I just want to play Soul Reaver. I just want to put Soul Reaver into a system in 2020, 2021 and just have it work. That's all I want to do.
Nope.
And I can't do it. I do think that the thing is, if we're just completely honest about the brass tacks reality of playing past-gen games on newer consoles, I don't think the data supports it. Like, yes, Black Ops 2 got back in the sales chart when they made it backwards compatible on Xbox One. But it's obviously Call of Duty. It's a bit of an outlier. It's not necessarily going to prove the rule that past-gen has value, because it doesn't necessarily. It will be a massive R&D, be a massive R&D investment for them to factor something in that emulates past consoles inside the PS5, and then how do they then monetize that? The more direct way to monetize that is to, like you said, sell different versions of these games back to us, like what Activision have been doing with those remakes, and they do it pretty well. It is more of just a quality of life thing or a consumer-friendly thing to say, hey, we're honoring your past collections and you can do this. And I guess they would say that they are doing that because they have PS4 compatibility, but not the PlayStation 2. I do hope or wonder that, I kind of wonder what they're going to do in regards to like digital platform. They've got the PlayStation Plus collection, which kind of feels like a Nintendo Switch Online platform that they could plug stuff into and take off. But I'm curious what they do in regards to even acknowledging previous generations before the PS4, because their messaging is all over the place in regards to, we believe in generations, we believe in the future, but also we're going to put Spidey on PS4, don't worry about it. So at this stage, I kind of don't know. But But yeah, we initially first covered this back in February. That was when the patent first came out. We then had, of August this year, Ubisoft's official website listed that the new consoles wouldn't be backwards compatible with PS1, PS2, PS3 games, which was the beginning of the end until Mr. Ryan buried it all together. But yeah, do you think that they should do this stuff at all? Or do you think that it is just the case that most people just play new games?
For me, it was never a case. I never wanted it to be sort of native. It's not that I had anything against it, but for me, I don't have a collection of PlayStation 1 games or PlayStation 3 games. I have some PlayStation 2 games that I could tap back into, but the dream of, like you said, being able to pop in Soul Reaver, I never thought that was quite feasible. For me,
Crash
it was
Bash,
just...
mate.
I love Crash Bash, but for me, it was always finding a way of kind of buying those experiences digitally, or, streaming them or emulating them or whatever through the PlayStation 5 system, because when it comes to like secondhand PlayStation 1 games, like some of the markups on those from secondhand stores are ridiculous. So that would have been a difficult economy to buy back into. But I feel like, like the data shows, at least the data that we've been shown and the data that, the likes of Jim Ryan have talked about, that people, obviously prefer new games and they prefer repackaged versions of older games rather than just buying them back into them wholesale, you know what I mean? Like, there are anomalies, Black Ops 2, like you said, but the likes of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, the likes of, Crash Bandicoot, the likes of Resident Evil Remake, I feel like that's a way to kind of, in the minds of these business people, fulfill that legacy while still making mad bank on the sales, because it is technically new, but I think for a long time, it just doesn't seem to be a thing that Sony's really bothered about. They're bothered about keeping the 100 million plus install base of PS4. They're really bothered about making sure those people feel served by the PlayStation 5 and they can bring their library over. Anyway. Well, yeah, they are now. Yeah. And they can bring their library over and they can, ease the transition. But when it comes to previous generations, it's almost like they're not too fussed, and I'm sure it wouldn't hurt their bottom line to not do it. It might cost them more to implement this kind of extensive backwards compatibility and no one play it. But I feel like it's always been a half step with them. We had the PlayStation Classics on the PlayStation 4, and that, to me, even though I did buy into a few of the Star Wars games and stuff, felt a bit half-assed. It was always just a handful of titles with trophy support. I think they supported higher resolutions and stuff. But it wasn't much, and they weren't pushed much. It wasn't pushed as like a core feature. It was just something that was there if you wanted it. And I think if you treat something as being there if you want it, that's how it'll be perceived by players. When Xbox came out and said, we've got backwards compatibility, we're rolling it into Games Pass, look at it, focus on it, we're going to push it, we're going to market it to hell, people cared. But if you just... It's just all in how you treat it. If Sony, it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If they treat it as something disposable, we're going to treat it as disposable as well. And it's like, no, you could do so much more with it.
Well, the thing that I wonder with them, like, and especially with Nintendo as well, because Nintendo have like that whole weird thing with limited access to the Mario 3D All-Stars collection. If you're a legacy company and you have 20, 25, 30 years worth of history, if you're those executives at the top, how many different ways can you think of to monetize that legacy? And you don't necessarily, if you're thinking of the bottom line and the maximum revenue, etc., all the gross stuff, you don't want to put everything out there all at once, because what are you then going to do? You can't make your entire, legacy available all at once, because then you can't monetize it going forward and you've just lost that whole thing. So whether that leads to limited access windows for certain titles, or something like a PlayStation, like they did the PlayStation Classic, like you said, the little mini versions, which after the fact it was revealed that they had actually tested a ton of games and only a handful of them made it on, assumedly because of the third-party contract stuff they would have had to do to get the likes of Tony Hawk's, the original ones, back on the mini PlayStation. And it is just that whole thing where I have to assume that those people who are looking at the bottom lines trying to make profit on this stuff, it isn't going to benefit them to make everything available all of the time, because they would rather think of the future, potentially do a remake, a remaster, or just potentially, just not make everything available so they can do a PS2 collection as part of the PS Plus collection or something like that, or do a PlayStation 2 mini or whatever. It's just that thing where, it would have just been lovely. It would have been great to have a system that just does everything in regards to PlayStation, and it's such a massive open goal. But when that goal can be multiplied and they can score a whole handful of different goal analogies across the next few years, then I think that's probably what they're going to do instead. I just want something that lets me play this whole Reaver games.
Dude,
Jim.
You're absolutely right, Jim, Scott Tilford. But when it comes to like Sony
Ryan
and stuff, like, they've done enough where they can tick the box. They can say, we've got 99% of PlayStation 4 games coming over. We have older
And a
PlayStation
PS2
3
ain't
games you can play on PlayStation now. We've got the PlayStation Classics. They can essentially be like, what more do you want? And for me, it's just give more of a crap about it, you know what I mean? But obviously,
about your own history.
Yeah, they have enough where they can say, well, you've got options, you know what I mean? You've got all of these different services to play older games, and because they're not going to commit to it more, and because they haven't really talked about backwards compatibility before now, like, it's only been us reading into patents, reading into what people have said about it and stuff. We've got ourselves hyped for this potential machine that can play all of these consoles, but that's never been what they're selling, really. If you like dig down into what they've been actually saying, it's never been this. So I think part of it is on us, but I don't think it's a ridiculous thing to have wanted, especially in this era, or expected in this era where people and companies are properly embracing their back catalogs.
Well, in terms of, like, obviously, like, the us is like the royal us, the royal we, in terms of like the overall sort of people who are following this industry across the last couple of years, because it got so big that Famitsu did ask Jim Ryan the first chance they got after the latest showcase, and it has been a talking point for the last sort of year and a half, however long it's been in this weird maelstrom of time. But like I said, they had such an open goal, they could have just taken it, or at least shone a light on their approach to legacy content going forward, as opposed to just pretending that PS3 and everything before it just doesn't exist. There are a handful of titles on PS Now, so I guess you can access them that way. But again, they don't really market PS Now in anything as a competitor to Game Pass, so it's a big old thing. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below. What's your general approach to legacy stuff? Do you find yourself going back to old PlayStation games, or is it all about the future? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
My friend.
Bye.